So our next speaker in this session, our last sort of public archaeology talk for this evening, is Richard Osgood, who will be speaking to us about finds from two projects in Pembrokeshire and Anglesey done with project Operation Nightingale. Richard is the senior archaeologist for the Defence Infrastructure Organisation for the MOD, looking after the archaeology on MOD land. His work includes coordinating Operation Nightingale project, using archaeology to aid the recovery of military personnel, and trying to resolve the department's heritage at risk, both of which will be covered in this talk. Richard, thank you.
Thank you. I've got to start by saying to Janine, Paul says thank you for showing his massive metal detecting venue. That's one of my veterans. So we'll start with that. Before I came to the conference this morning, I popped over to the incredible little shrine of Minerva just over the River Dee. But being a Bath lad, I can't get away from it being Sulis Minerva, frankly. So that's the sort of thing I wanted to think about, because we're looking at the two sites today in Wales. I think there's an element of continuity between those sort of Celtic Iron Age deities and the Romans, and the reuse of those particularly venerated sites. So these are two sites that we're going to look at today connected with that. And as you've mentioned, we are going to talk about Op Nightingale. These are both sites that we used Operation Nightingale veterans on. One was a more traditional excavation, which was run for me by HENEB, the former Dyfed Archaeological Trust, and Fran Murphy did a fantastic job leading that for me. And the second one, and I'll mention it in the second half of the lecture, is metal detecting completely. And metal detecting is utterly illegal on the Ministry of Defence estate. Probably, you can guess why, but live ordnance and metal detecting does not mix well, although it would resolve itself long term. Okay, so we're going to start with the map of Castle Martin. This is the first site we're going to look at. Let's try and get there we go. The wiggle. Everything that's shaded on here is Ministry of Defence land. We own about 1% of the UK mainland. A lot of it fairly miserable. If you're training on it as a soldier, that's the good training experience. If it's not raining, it's not training. And if you've been to the Brecon Beacons in full swing, you would understand that. However, we are going down to Pembroke, which is glorious holiday land, actually. I tried to book a travel lodge for one night on the Recce, and it was £200 a night. Travel lodge. So yeah, des res for holiday. So it's an absolutely glorious location. It does happen to be the live tank ranges. So you can only really get to these sites in August when they're not firing and not doing the big armoured manoeuvres. This is a site that I would think would be fairly firmly on our heritage at risk list because of coastal erosion. And that's the reason why we are coming to look at it. It's this big promontory coming over here. This is the Buckspool Fort, Buckspool Castle, sticking out, one of several promontory forts on the tank ranges, and there are even further numbers of them in this part of Pembrokeshire. The designated area is the shaded element in blue there, Buckspool Down Camp, and you've got this land bridge. This is the photograph of the site, the land bridge, which is eroding. And sooner or later, we're going to have this big crash. There was a similar bridge, the Green Bridge of Wales, not too far away, which lost quite a fair big chunk of it recently. So that's eventually going to go, and all this archaeology is going to be pretty much inaccessible unless you're incredibly foolhardy. So we thought we would put to Cadw the opportunity of having a look at a couple of roundhouses, Iron Age roundhouses on this Iron Age promontory fort, and then in year 2, which is going to be next year, this year, in this area here, where there's a square possible tower. It's about 5 metres by 5 metres. And this is very much work in progress. This is stuff we did in the summer and in the autumn. So you're hearing it hot off the press, so to speak. If you look at the promontory, the photograph, you can see all these roundhouses, we think. Incredibly densely occupied, hugely important archaeology, and that's what we wanted to have a look at. It's also been looked at by the Royal Commission. This is the Cherish project, led by Dr. Toby Driver, and he's done incredibly important work and picked out various things that he thought would be useful for us to have a look at in conjunction with the Scheduled Monument Clearance and Cadw. So you've got these ditches with the ditch terminal, rock cut ditch terminal, which has, as he said, high potential for fines. I was told by the inspector it's not threatened. So maybe we won't be digging that immediately. However, all around here, definitely threatened from the blowhole. And these must have been important sites, I think, in the late Iron Age and throughout that sort of period, because they're coming up with extraordinary noises when you're there. You've got rainbows appearing from the sea spray. You've got seals and seal pups that are in the near vicinity making very curious noises, chuffs flying around. A really dramatic and important thing. And if you know about your late Iron Age, these are places, caves and blowholes, where you get ceremonial deposits. You get offerings put in, and I think that's possibly the sort of thing we're seeing in the late Iron Age. This is a photograph taken from the other side, just of our fenced-off area. The blowhole is at the bottom, so there's the bridge going right the way through it. I think, potentially, you are seeing eroded ditches here, through the limestone bedrock cut through, and this square platform on the top, which is where we're aiming to look at next year, is associated with that. So I think the preservation could be quite good on top of that, if we have a look at it. Well, here's our excavation site. Summer taken from, this is Toby's photograph while we were working in August. Yes, it was a very hot and sunny year. I can imagine it could be pretty grim if we're there in a wet summer. I don't want to tempt fate, but you can see the ditches very, very impressively here. This is the square structure, which was our spoil heap for this year. It's all covered in triple SI, so I had to put it on an area. We weren't going to disturb the grassland, so we had to trek up and down with our turfs and our spoil. And we looked at 2 Iron Age roundhouses, which looked at the crest of the promontory down over into the blowhole. And we did this with a team of veterans, mainly Brits. And these are guys, men and women that have gone back from military service for quite a time. We've got 2 Welsh veterans of the Falklands War involved in this particular excavation. It's nice to get a lot of local vets involved in the project. And we soon saw that the natural bedrock was being augmented by artificial terracing. So you can see, hopefully, the curve of stones, of the limestone blocks that have been placed on top of a bedrock 2 or 3 courses high in a semicircle overlooking the blowhole. For me, it felt a bit like the Menack Theatre. If you've ever been down to Cornwall, you've got this incredibly dramatic landscape and a sort of bench of semicircular rocks. So 2 structures together, they join one another in a sort of figure of 8. You have one more southerly one here, which you saw before, but it joins into this one with a little passageway between the 2. And we think probably it joins to a 3rd. So these are conjoining structures, not what you'd expect from an Iron Age roundhouse. And on completion, it's like that. We haven't got to the bottom of this particular feature. That's what we're going to return to do this summer. But nonetheless, it's got confusing floor layers in bits we have exposed, not something you'd want to walk on. No post holes that we, again, would expect to see in a roundhouse. We were finding a lot of material within this particular structure. We were getting charred grain. I'm not going to even attempt to tell you what this was. My wife is an archaeobotanist. If I did try, I'd probably be in a lot of trouble for getting it wrong. So charred grain, also limpets shells in little middens within this structure. Very, very odd. So that's as far as we got in the first year, as the Royal Commission and Henneb standing on top of it. There is a lot of land behind them, don't worry, it's not quite as dangerous as it looks. But you can see the scale. So it's an augmented piece of natural limestone with this three course, as far as we've exposed, semicircle and joined to a second one. So this is the one that they were standing by. Has a passageway between the 2 and a big more of a circle in that direction. But to me, they don't seem like roundhouses in the Iron Age roundhouses that I've excavated before. There aren't hearth elements, there aren't post holes. It's a real curiosity. The other thing about this site is an Iron Age promontory fort, Iron Age roundhouses, not one Iron Age find. Not a single Iron Age find, which is probably quite good for you because we're at the Roman Finds Conference. But we only put 1 finds box in with us because the antiquary reports, actually from the early 20th century, said that we've had a little look at Buckspool and all we've got is a couple of sherds of mortarium and I think a bit of amphora. And so we weren't expecting to find anything. And that was an error on our part because we had hundreds and hundreds of sherds of pottery. This is just from the first day, this tray. You can see all sorts of different bits, a lot of black burnished ware, a lot of mortaria, a couple of stamps, which we haven't had a look at yet. Quite a few spindle wells as well, stone spindle wells, all really elegant things. In fact, it became a bit of a competition to see who could find the most spindle wells on site, which was not what I was expecting on the first couple of days. But some of the finds were a little less utilitarian. There's some really quite pretty finds. You've got a jet pin on the left, gaming counters, there were a few of those. And we had 5 or 6 of these very, very small, fine glass beads. There's the jet pin. In fact, there was a base, the point of the pin was found later. The pictures of brooches I've got are nothing like as good as the ones we've seen earlier today, but you'll have to take my word that the top 2 are brooches. And at the bottom right, you've got 3 iron spoons. The pottery we had from site, it's the biggest collection of Roman pottery from a site in West Wales, a domestic site in West Wales. And the coins, we've had more coins here than a domestic site in West Wales before. Over 160, I believe, at last count. Vast majority are 3rd century, minims, a lot of minims. But we've got a couple of quite nice Carausian coins. We've heard of Carausius earlier today. So here's Carausius. He's one of my favourite emperors. He's great, isn't he? He's a very famous, well, Belgian stroke Dutch, but I just like his story. And looking after the Classis Britannia, fantastic. But we've also got Constantine as well. So we have got some 4th century material as well. But largely, we're looking at a 3rd century date for this particular site. And is the report that's come out from Henneb at the moment, the interim report. It's got some of the coins there. So you've got a reverse of Constantine there with military standards. So I thought I'd include that for the veterans' perspective. So there's some quite nice, well-preserved coins. Base of a pot there. Two pots we have with a stamp on, and they're not particularly clear here, but something that will come out in the wash. The key thing for me was the effect it had on the vets. It's that excitement of discovery. It ticked every single box in that it's in the open air, a beautiful location, they're making finds, and the key one in the middle of that Venn diagram is making friends and having camaraderie. We all stayed on the base, made use of the very cheap mess, and these are both British military veterans with some of the pots and coins they were finding. For the first time here, we also had Ukrainian veterans. This is Dmitro, who was phenomenal at deturfing, and he did say it's because he's done a lot of trenches recently. So he really embraced British archaeology in its entirety, as you can see from his T-shirt, and he's holding up a mortarium here. The staggering thing from our point of view was that within he was on site just for a week. Within 2 days of him finishing his excavation, he was back fighting the Russians. And it's just an extraordinary thing. This is his 1 week's R&R effectively before he went back. But he's still alive, and he still talks very fondly about it. So from his point of view, it was an incredibly important experience for him. The post-excavation is also enthusiastically, by the look of it, being done by a lot of the veterans alongside Henneb. This is the Swansea military veterans team working alongside Henneb and cleaning a lot of the pottery and bones that we found on the site. So it's a great all-round experience for them. It was televised, so the guys are almost as shameless as me as going on and experiencing this site on television. So Digging for Britain filmed, this is James, one of our cavalry veterans, who's worked on Castle Martin as a military training entity, but now he's back doing archaeology on the site. Probably thankfully hadn't hit it with his armoured vehicle. So that's the first site. So that's a lot of 3rd century Roman material in what we thought was going to be a very nice, simple Iron Age site. We're now right up to the other end of Wales. This is up on Anglesey in Ysmon, and we're looking at RAF Valley. You'll be familiar with RAF Valley, or be familiar with Anglesey through the fantastic accounts of Tacitus and his attacks on the Druids and putting down their sacred groves and things like that. Well, Llyn Bach, the sacred lake, sacred bog up there, is right on the edges of RAF Valley. It's featured in this fabulous cartoon produced by Cadw, and that's why it's always nice to produce a cartoon map at the start of it. Today, it's the main fast jet training area for the UK, so we use overseas flying units as well. These are Hawk jets that fly over the bog. You can see the runway in the bottom left, and Llyncaribach is this particular pool up here. And there's the view off Llyncaribach over on the runway. Well, the reason, with the runway in the background, the reason it's so important, you can see the old museum, the Ministry of Works signs that now on the side of the lake, is that in 1943, as a result of the American bomber requirements, they had to enlarge the runways. They exposed the sand dunes as a result. They covered the sand dunes with nearby peat drained out of a bog, and in so doing got one of the vehicles stuck, not that one. The vehicle that was stuck, they dragged out with a chain that was found in the arisings from the bog. They thought the chain was a bit weird, and one of the guys did a sketch, sent it to the National Museum of Wales, and they said, that's an Iron Age slave gang chain. And that's one of the images there, one of two that was found at Llyncaribach, the only ones found in Britain. So they'd been dragging a vehicle out the bogs with it anyway. So 160 to 180 items of Iron Age material were spread across the runway in 1943, including these wonderful things. You've got the bronze plaque with the Latane decorations on it, bent swords, bits of an Iron Age trumpet, not quite the fancy carnix that's been hitting the telly. You've got spears, all sorts of wonderful things. And Cyril Fox said this might not be all of it. And it's been associated with that attack by Suetonius Paulinus on the Druids, on Anglesey, and this desperate last thing of sacrifices to the gods in the bog to stem that Roman advance. Probably not the case. You've got 100 plus years of deposition. This is the airfield today. The Luftwaffe very helpfully photographed the spread of peat in the 1940s, so we can investigate, because the runway is being enlarged and renewed. We had a very small window to get actual permission to metal detect to see if Cyril Fox had missed stuff. And not surprisingly, he just did the Mark I eyeball rather than having a metal detector. So we looked at anywhere there was peat. You can see the peat on top of sand dunes. If there was peat with a metal signal, we looked for stuff. Well, we did try and do a methodical survey, but it was blowing an absolute hoolie, so we left them to do a bit more free play. Some metal was older than others, and you can have some of it you can visually recognise. Some of it, if you've got an XRF machine, you can see that difference in modern gunmetal, but also that change in Iron Age to Roman metallic compositions, which is very useful. So an American dog tag, a British bullet, and a British Second World War medal. But when you find something that is ancient, it has, again, this sort of spirit. This is one of our RAFettes who has found something. This is Deleth. This is the granddaughter of Cyril, of the man that made the original discoveries, again, holding something that she's just found. So incredibly powerful emotions caused by archaeological finds. So these are the two things we did find in the first go. This is a terret. We've seen a few of those today. It has some glass inlay at the top. This is a late one, so this is that sort of interface between the Iron Age and the Roman period. And again, we've heard about the Polden Hills. This is a Polden Hills type of bridle bit, horse bridle bit. So this is into that period which we recognise as being sort of very, very end of the Iron Age into the early Roman period. We went back. And this is sort of a bit of an exclusive for you. First time I mentioned these in a public realm. These are finds that we made in the spring of last year. You have Iron Age chariot tyres. You have these, which are nave hoops from basically the hubcaps of a Roman chariot. You have two more bridle bits. There's another bridle bit here. You've got three turrets, possible shield decorations, possible baldric hangings, quite phenomenal. And then in October, it got even worse. So my budget's gone absolutely for a Burton, but you've got, again, huge numbers of these bridle bits. We've got 9 turrets here, more of these nave bands, a sword. This is a Latane sword and scabbard, loads of Iron Age chariot tyres. So why am I mentioning this at a Roman conference? Well, the reason is because some of the metallurgy is perfectly good for being Roman, and I don't believe that they stopped on AD 60 when Paulinus came over and this stopped being a significant place. Like Buckspool, it may have an Iron Age origin, but it's also important in the Roman period, and deposition continues. This is part of a dome-headed pin which has the alloying signature that could well be Roman. You have these bindings, similar things. I think we are seeing Iron Age depositions within the Roman period. Some of the designs on the artwork are perfectly, I think they've been influenced by the Romans. There's a chariot that's been found recently in Pembrokeshire. The turret designs are much more Romanized than a Latin style. So I think we are seeing continuity of deposition at both Buckspool and Anglesey, at Llyn-Cerrig-Bach, from the Iron Age into the Roman period. So Roman finds, I think, we're going to make more of in the future. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard. We do have time for questions if anyone has any about either of these supposed Iron Age sites turning up as surprisingly Roman. Yes, at the back.
Can I ask the railway analysis you got done? Was it just the presence of zinc, or was it trace element stuff that you were?
Yeah, it's on the zinc basis at the moment. So it's being looked at by Bournemouth University with their XRF, and yes, it's zinc to start with. But we're going through. It's all been at the moment. It's all been curated. We have the fine liaison officer there, so Adele Bricking's looking at it, and it's now curated at the National Museum in Cardiff. And it's been gifted by the MOD to the National Museum. It'll end up in Anglesey. So they're going to do a lot of assessment work to tie that story down a little bit at the moment. But as we've been hearing earlier, it's really important that this is gifted and on display. So it goes to the National Museum, but it'll be ending up in Anglesey for local people to see. But yeah, it's looked at that way.
Yeah. Yes, Howard.
Really enjoyed it, thank you so much. The first site was obviously not accessible in any meaningful way, but at least Llyn-Cerrig Bach is. Is it too early for discussions of potentially enhancing the rather old plaque there or anything further?
No, that's a really good idea, and we'd love to do more with that. Yes, so the bog is right outside the airbase, and everyone can go up to it and make libations or whatever you want to do. Just imagine. And I think it's on nature conservation land. I think it's some sort of nature reserve. It's got huge potential for more underwater geophysical surveys and topographic works. I think there are even local stories that they've got the wrong bog. It's the one on the other side that it came from. Who knows? We're going to try and do more actual test pitting where we make finds around just 1 metre squares to see if there's any animal bone or human bone, because that's what supposedly came out in the finds in the 40s. I think we do need to make more of it because it's, as an undergraduate, you always hear of Llyn-Cerrig Bach if you do the Iron Age, and it's tucked away in the hinterland of Anglesey. And I think, Oriel Mon wants to make a lot more. The museum there, they want to. At the moment, they've got a treasure exhibition, much like there is one in Liverpool. And next year, they're doing one, I believe, on the Celts, and I think they're going to major on that.
Great. I hope people will be able to come and see some of your finds soon. So that was more work at Llyn-Cerrig Bach. What about Buckspool? You said you're going back this year?
Yes, so this year, I'd love to do more of that ditch terminal. That's a discussion I'm having with Cadu. But it's bottoming those two circular structures and then investigating this square structure. Now, the square structure doesn't appear on any of the military maps. It doesn't look military anyway. So is it an 18th century tower? I don't know. There's nothing on the surface. Could it be a Roman lighthouse? Could it be a signal station? Don't know. That's something we want to find out. I mean, I'm completely not the right person to ask because I thought those roundhouses were Iron Age. So who knows? Maybe it's Roman.
Yeah, I think everyone would have thought those roundhouses were Iron Age.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.